stay a while.
Everyone, welcome to the Stay a While table. I am Tommi, Vincent, your host, and today we have joining us the lovely Dr. Dominique Broussard, and also known as Dr. Dom, in which we will be referring to her throughout the podcast. So thank you so much, Dr. Dom, for joining me at the Stay a While table today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I know that you will provide a lot of insight for the listeners, not only insight, but you're going to leave them with some takeaways that they will be able to apply to their life. Now, this season, we have been very intentional about bringing on guests that will be able to provide strategy and action steps for women in their lives. I appreciate affirmations. I appreciate, speaking good stuff over your life, but the good stuff doesn't take away what's going on inside of you. When you speak those words, that's not the work. That's just a tool that you can use. So I am looking forward to our conversation, believing that we are going to get some strategies here. But before we get into the main course of this conversation, I would love to talk to you about a place that was healing for me. I found my healing in the kitchen via food, and it loved me back to life. And so I want to talk to you about my food segment, Food is Love. And the first question I have for you here is, what food best describes your personality and why?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. I was ready to answer like what's my favorite food and like why I love it. I would say gumbo is it's like my favorite food. And I think that it could also describe my personality as well. So I born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so I grew up eating gumbo all the time. And what I love so much about gumbo is that it is always, you have to serve it hot, right? And it's something that is so warm and soothing for the soul. And I think that my personality is one that's warm. And then my work that I do as a therapist, I help folks soothe their soul.
That's beautiful. Okay, gumbo. Name one recipe that is special to you and why.
Rum balls.
Rum balls.
So
Okay.
yes, rum balls. I'll explain. So it's a recipe that my grandmother introduced it to the family. I'm not sure where she got it. I probably should ask, but it's a recipe that she introduced to the family. And so for me, that recipe holds a lot of meaning, not so much because of what the food is itself, but the opportunity to spend time with my grandmother and really getting to know her as an individual.
That's what I love about dishes that have graced our tables throughout the history of our lives, because they truly do tell a story and they keep us connected to our ancestors. And that's why, for me, food is that connective tissue. And my grandmother played a huge role in where I am today and why I even created this table, because her kitchen was this place, it was like a community, like a water hole where people came and they received the nourishment that they needed. And it was so powerful. I don't think I recognized it when I was younger, but as an adult and when I was going through challenging times, I always found myself looking to feed my family, but the preparation of the food and my ability to pour my love and everything that was in my heart into those dishes, that somehow really healed me and helped me to get through some really tough times in my life. So I love that story and why it means so much to you.
Thank you.
So for those of us who weren't raised to even consider our mental health, what can first steps to being vocal about it look like and sound like?
So, yeah, there's a lot of us out there that weren't raised that way, right? Like that wasn't talked about in my household. And so I think what I usually encourage folks to do is to say it out loud to somebody, right? That to say, I think I might need therapy. And if that feels like too much, then think about who your go to person is, the person that you bounce off all of your ideas, and share it with them. But don't share it with them from the intention of getting approval, because that's when we oftentimes, if we reach out to our go to person and we're seeking approval, then that might stop us from actually taking the step, right? But reach out to your go to person and let them know and ask for support in that. You know, let them know that, hey, here's, like, I think I could benefit from going to therapy. And I want you to be my accountability partner in this. I don't need you to believe in what I'm doing, but I need you, as I'm starting this process, I just need you to be my accountability partner to make sure I'm doing it. And so, what that could look like is your person checking in on you after maybe 2 weeks and asking, well, did you look some folks up? Did you make a few calls? And then once you've made a few calls and you've made a connection, and I'll be honest that can take a while. And so I would encourage people when they're going through that process to be patient and to stick with it, because I know that depending on where you live, if you're looking for a Black woman therapist, which I mean, I know for myself, that's also my preference, right? It may be harder to find, or it may be that they don't take insurance, or that, you know, they're not taking new clients. And and so there's a host of reasons why you might not be able to find one. And so it may take some time, but I wouldn't give up on it. I think one of the beautiful things that we've gotten out of the pandemic, in the midst of all of the sadness and the grief and the trauma that have come along with it, one of the beautiful things is that there's been opportunity for folks to have more access to therapy, since most therapists are still virtual. So, here in California is a huge state. And so, but because I'm licensed to see anyone who lives in the state of California, I can see someone virtually who's 8 hours away in San Diego. And so I think that has opened up the door for more availability for folks to access therapy services now.
Hmm. Is that something you believe that you'll keep, God willing, we get post pandemic for real, because we're still in a pandemic? Um, is that something that you believe that you'll maintain, the ability to do virtual so you can touch more people?
Yes, definitely. To be perfectly honest, prior to the pandemic, I was hesitant about the virtual space in terms of providing therapy, because I was so used to providing it in person.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was, well, why would I provide it virtually when I have the option to see someone in person? And then when the pandemic hit, the university that I work for, and everybody had to switch to virtual. And so all of a sudden, I was forced into seeing the benefit and seeing how much my clients benefited from having this available to them. And then also recognizing that there were a lot of folks who sought out therapy services because it was virtual now, because there was a lot of hesitancy around being in person, seeing a therapist in person. But the idea of being able to meet with a therapist from the comfort of your home made a lot of folks warm up to the idea of therapy.
Mm-hmm. And no one saw them walking into the office.
Oh, yes, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah, we create these mental obstacles in our
Yes.
mind to cause us to really lose sight of what's on the other side of the obstacle. If we can
Yep.
just get past it, there's something great on the other side of it. And so, we can make some stuff up now.
Yeah, we can. I have seen it.
um, what do you do when you realize you're out of mental alignment? Well, let me rephrase that. What are some key indicators that lets someone know that they're out of mental alignment?
So I would think the first thing is how they're responding to people around them.
Mhm.
So if you find yourself, if you know that you're not a person who's easily irritated, and you find yourself becoming easily irritated, that might be a definite sign that you are out of mental alignment. If the things that normally bring you joy, you're no longer interested in, you might be out of mental alignment. If you feel it in your body, then you might be out of mental alignment. Because as you mentioned before, there is a deep connection between mind and body. And so I think the thing that we can often miss is we may be experiencing physical issues when really it's a mental concern manifesting in a physical realm.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think about the number of people that go to the emergency room thinking they're having a heart attack when it's truly a panic attack. And that's the like biggest example that most people can understand,
Mhm.
right?
That just recently happened to a dear friend of mine where her chest started aching and getting tight and she thought she was having a heart attack. And when she went to the hospital, every test came back negative.
Yep.
And there was an issue with the one of the tests. There was an error, so they kept her overnight. And it was that time overnight that gave her an opportunity to process outside of her home, away from her family, where she knew there was some changes that needed to be made in her life. And so it truly was a blessing in disguise for her because she got the
Yeah.
opportunity to have that mental break to really be able to like say, okay, so now what am I going to do to change the result that I'm receiving in my physical body so that it doesn't become something far more worse and become something actual that's taking place inside of me.
Yeah. That's so important for us to like be in tune with.
Mhm.
And I think the thing is that, you're having that time in the hospital overnight gave her that quiet space to get in tune with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get in alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very easy to get caught up in life where, where I'm talking about, it's like you have this body that you live in, but you're not in tune with it. You're not living in it. You're just kind of going through life robotically,
Yeah.
and you never get to know you.
Hmm.
And we're so busy just trying to make it. When I think about the amazing women that raised me and, that had an opportunity to put their thumbprint on my life, I definitely witnessed women who were just taking life and throwing it on their back, didn't
Yeah.
pause, didn't take a break. And it truly became, for many years of my life, it became the guide to how I would live womanhood.
Hmm.
And I never saw anyone verbally talk about life in that way and the stress that they were carrying, or nor did I see them, take a step back or take action into addressing their mental health. So
Right.
for me, the journey to recognizing that I needed to get help, it wasn't something I'm sure I needed it long before I got it, but by the time I did get help, the lights had already went out. And
Mm.
had I been in tune and, just had someone talk to me about that, just recognizing signs and things that I could be on the lookout for, to know that, Tommi, you need to talk with someone, a
Yeah.
professional, not just anyone. You need to talk
Right.
to a professional, because your light is about to go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so real. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think that's the thing is like, that's exactly what it is being in tune with self, right? So that you can recognize those signs. Because I think too that even the signs that I mentioned, if you're not truly in tune with yourself and you're in that focus of being on the grind, then you might not notice it. I think about myself, for example. I remember when I was in graduate school and we were studying for our exams, our comprehensive exams. Major exams, you got to pass it. You're not going further if you don't pass it. And I remember the morning before, I woke up and a portion of my lip was swollen. And I was like, what's going on here? I didn't eat anything out of the ordinary, nothing that I should be having a reaction to. What's going on? I don't know. Just left it alone, kept pushing because I'm like, I'm got these exams. I got to focus on these exams. Next day, the other side of my lip had swollen. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, one, this is like not aesthetically cute. Like, who wants to go out in public with a quarter of their lips swollen, right? But two, this is a distraction from me studying for my exams, right? Like, I was bothered by it. I was upset by it. And then I was like, okay, well, wait, hold on, slow down, girl. Go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, well, if you didn't have anything that you're having an allergic reaction to, what's going on in your life right now? What are you stressed about? And I was like, oh, and then that became like an aha moment for me of, oh, so even though I might say out loud, I'm fine, I got this, my body is going to show me, no, you don't. Slow your roll. You don't. you you are possibly denying or minimizing the stress that you're experiencing. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to get your attention and I'm going to show you that you've got to slow down. And I think sometimes it can feel so overwhelming when we get the sign. It's like, whoa, hold on. I didn't need a sign this big
Mhm. Mhm.
that it was time to slow down. But the reality that we have to face is that we did, right? That we were so on that grind that it had to be something big for us to truly slow down, because otherwise we would have looked at it, added it to our backpack, and said, let's keep going.
Let's keep pushing.
Yeah. And so, I do think one of the things that I really enjoy, I follow the nap ministry
Mhm.
on Instagram. And I just love all the things that she shares, because what it does is it encourages rest, right? And like I was saying before, like it's about that quality. And then I think the other piece that I love about the nap ministry is that it teaches us that grind culture is not healthy for us. And that even though, like you mentioned before, our moms, our grandmoms, our aunties, like all of the women who came before us, even though that was what they did, like grinding, and sometimes wore it like a badge of honor,
Absolutely.
we don't have to.
Mhm.
We don't have to.
Mhm. Yeah, I make it my business to take off the superwoman cape because I'm not a superwoman. And there was a period of time in my marriage and with my children, there was no lines of demarcation. I had no boundaries. And I literally was working myself into a hole that inevitably it got to the point where I wasn't coming out of that thing until I got the help that I needed. And so now, I work my boundaries, and I am very clear in my communication. And it's gotten to the point where, initially when you start boundary setting and stuff like that, it could come across really hard and harsh, when you're speaking to your spouse and speaking to your children, but they recognize that this is necessary in order for me to be my best self. Um, these are things I need to do. And when I'm my best self, I actually have more to offer to my husband and to my children.
Yes. The example that I give folks is thinking about a cup, right? And when you have a cup, the idea is that you want your cup to be overflowing, because anytime you are doing something for others, that is taking from your cup. But if work, spouse, children, other relatives, e- like professional organizations, like just any extra stuff, any of all of those things pull from your cup. But if you are not pouring into yourself, so if you aren't getting enough rest, if you aren't praying and meditating, if you aren't exercising, if you aren't feeding yourself the foods that make you feel good, if you aren't spending time with girlfriends, like if you aren't doing the things that fill your cup to the point where it's overflowing, then everyone around you is going to keep pulling and you're going to have nothing left to give.
Mhm. Mhm. 100%. So I have one more question, and then I want to talk about your Cultivating Her Space podcast.
Yes.
So the final question here is: what are some basic scripts that we can use both internally and with others to advocate for ourselves to and create firm boundaries?
Oh, okay. I love boundaries. So the first one is no. Period. No is a complete sentence, okay? That is probably the start there. Start there. If you have trouble saying no to yourself or to the people in your life, then you're going to struggle with setting any other boundary. So start with saying no. Say, if you know, like if you set a goal that you want to wake up in the morning and get your 30 minutes of exercise in, right? Then you may say no to staying up past your bedtime the night before. You may say no to hitting that snooze button when your alarm goes off in the morning, right? So that's how you say no to yourself, right? But then you say no to others when your children ask you to cook something that wasn't in your plan, that is not necessarily healthy for them, is not part of their nutritionist diet for them, right? You say no and you stick to the boundary. If you're at work, and this is how you can add like more to the sentence. If you're at work and someone asks you, for instance, to stay late, and you know that you can't because you have to pick up your kids. No, I can't. You don't have to offer an explanation why. No, I can't. Sorry, I can't. So start with no, and then you'll be able to deepen the boundaries based on what it is that you need around you. But yeah, baby steps. Start with no.
Hmm. As I like to say that a no to others is a yes to yourself.
Yes.
And so it is such an important word in our vocabulary. But if we're being honest, we're taught at a very early age to remove it.
Right. We are. We
Yes.
are. And I think the other piece of what that does too is when you learn to say no to people, to other people, it also on the flip side teaches you to seek consent from other people.
Mm. Mhm.
So it keeps you, so if you know that you want your boundaries respected, then in turn, you are not gonna be in a space of violating other people's boundaries or putting your will on others. You're gonna start to seek consent so that you can honor other people's boundaries as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's really good. So now let's get into your Cultivating Her Space podcast. Can you talk a little bit about the premise of it and why you have elected to create that platform? Um, and then if you could share one of your favorite episodes with us.
So, yes, okay, so I created Cultivating Her Space podcast with my friend, Terry Lomax. And so the the purpose of us creating this podcast was we came together and we said we wanted to have a space where we could talk about the things that affect Black women in particular, and do it in a way that feels real to who we are. So, our tagline is, from fibroids to fake friends. Like we're trying to create a space where Black women can just be, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And so that's the major premise, is truly just creating an opportunity to have the kinds of conversations that Black women want to have, that we know we're having at brunch, that we're having at church, that create the space to have those conversations for Black women.
mhm. Do you have a favorite episode that sticks out, or even specifically based off of our conversation, is there an episode in your queue that people could tune into to get even more out of this conversation?
Yes. So, the episode that comes to mind immediately is the episode about manifestation. And it's probably one of our more popular episodes because in that episode, my co host and I talk about how we focused on manifesting things for the podcast, but then also manifesting things in our personal lives. So for Terry, her and her husband wanting to have a baby. And then for me, at the time that we started the podcast, like I was struggling to pass the licensing exam, and which is a requirement to practice independently. And so we in that episode we talk about how we have to get in touch with spirit, right? Get in touch with ourselves, kind of set boundaries with other people, but all the things that you have to do to get to the space that you want to be in life.
Mm-hmm. So, everyone, make sure that you are adding to your list of podcasts that you're checking out and that you have your notifications on for. Make sure you do that for Cultivating Her Space podcast. You hear it right here at this table in this episode that Dr. Dom is full of knowledge and she's giving us understanding, and she's not just telling us based off of what she knows. She has the experience, she has the education, and, continue to support women that are doing great things and that are doing things that are cultivating us as women and truly desiring to see each other excel and to do well. Is there anything else, Dr. Dom, that you would like to share with the listeners?
You are enough. Period. You are enough.
Yes, we are. And on that note, thank you so much for joining me at the Stay a While table, Dr. Dom. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I know that the listeners will be truly blessed because I was sitting on the other side of it. I got some wisdom keys for myself, and I am grateful to have you joining me on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.